Yeah, good afternoon, Nompu. Thank you so much for that. Indeed, you're quite correct there. The CEO of Anglo Platinum, Chris Griffiths, is joining me here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. You've done all the intro. Let's get right into that interview. Chris, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. So a good headline number. That's one thing for sure. 120% is really great, but the sustainability of that now depends on how you drive the business forward from here. What are the plans?
So as you correctly point out, great set of financial results, and I think very pleasingly on the back of improving safety standards. And whatever we do, we've got to make sure that we keep the safety. We had no fatalities in the first half, and that'll certainly be our big focus. So for us going forward, I think there's 4 key areas that we can focus on. One is around using the increased amount of technology in our business, driving for increased efficiencies. We've got a number of low capex, fast payback projects. We've also got some longer term expansion projects that we're doing the studies on, and we've got some additional potential to create demand and increase the demand for our products. So we've got some really good focus areas for how we see the next wave of growth coming for the company.
I mean, one of the great factors has certainly been that that platinum price has certainly begun to pick up quite a bit extensively, around $850 or so dollars an ounce. Have you been able to find how you're going to mitigate the risks if it does head back lower at any point in time?
So I think when you talk about the platinum price, the really important thing to think about our business is to remember that we have a basket of platinum group metals, and that's really been very helpful and very beneficial for us financially. So if you think about the rhodium price was 47% up year on year. Palladium was up 39%, although we had an 11% decline in platinum, and whilst it has been picking up a bit, if you look at the basket price, in dollar terms was up by 16%, and with the rand weakening by 15%, we had a 33% increase in the rand basket price. And so if you think about the basket, I think we continue to see deficits in palladium and rhodium, so you're much more likely to see an increase in the palladium and the rhodium prices than platinum. Platinum's got some really good potential, perhaps in the more medium term, probably 18 to 2 months to 2 years. And then we'll see some substitution from platinum back into the gasoline order cats. And then what you're likely to see is platinum price pick up as well as making sure we don't have runaway prices, which we don't want in palladium and rhodium. So if you look at the basket, actually the fundamentals of the market and where they're used for is really positive, both in the short and the medium term.
Yeah, you did a lot of the groundwork really a little bit earlier on, of course, with the whole restructuring, finding ways to sort of make sure that the company is leaner and meaner. It's now come to a stage where it looks a whole lot better. Is this the form of the business going forward? Will there be any additions, subtractions, anything else that you're looking at?
So I think we've got the base portfolio sort of sorted out. It's a much simpler business, much more high quality business, and generating very substantial margins. We had a 45% margin in the first half of this year. So very sustainable, perhaps not quite that level going forward, but that kind of portfolio is really anyone's dream. And now I think going forward we're much more likely to see expansion at some of our options, perhaps at Mogalakwena or Mototolo de Brochen, rather that than you'd expect us to be buying someone else's properties. I don't think we've got much on the for sale block. We've done most of that work already, and so our portfolio is in really good shape.
How are you going to deal then with unions from here on in? I mean, if they look at a set of earnings like this, for example, you get into negotiations with them very soon, and they sort of look at it and say, well, if you're making profits, let's also then profit from that. How do you plan on dealing with that without preempting, of course, the negotiation?
Sure. So the one thing we all know about when prices go up is they can come down. And what we want to be really careful about is embedding unsustainable wage increases into the base of the business. And so, and in particular, if you think about a mine like a Amandelbult, where the majority of AMCU members are, that mine has got 15,000 people, but 60% of all costs at Amandelbult is labor and contractors. So you want to make sure that you don't embed very unsustainable cost increases into the base. And so we're going to be having, I think, fairly tough conversations, but what we have to do is make sure that we can use the cash that we're generating to invest in the business so we can sustain the long-term viability of the company.
Have you figured out sort of a level that you're willing to reach at? I know, as I said, I'm not asking for a figure, but have you sort of figured out a level which you're willing to go into the negotiations with, perhaps?
Sure, we've got clear ideas, and as you could imagine, we've got a mandate from our board, and so we've got a view of what that looks like.
Yeah, all right. And then taking the entity, I suppose, supposedly a little bit more forward in a sense, you've gotten to a really good stage for the entity, I suppose, at this half-year level. What else is next then, just for this half year? Are you hoping that this sort of comes back again with regards to how much you get out of the business? Are you seeing yourselves perhaps get a similar type of earnings?
So we absolutely have got increased production in the second half of the year. We'll have increased refining volumes in the second half. And therefore we'll have increased sales. So you would expect that. Exactly what the prices will be, of course, will be difficult to know. The rand has strengthened a bit from where it was in the first half. So exactly what the rand basket looks like, we don't quite know. But we do know that the fundamentals still look fairly strong. So, all things being equal, we should have a fairly good earnings into the second half as well.
Yeah. All right. Chris, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for it. Really great set of earnings. Well done to you. And
nice
hopefully chat again at year end. Thank you so much for that. Of course, Chris Griffiths, the CEO of Anglo-American Platinum there, as we spoke about those earnings, 120%, yes, up with regards to the headline earnings number. Revenue going up around 28% as well when you take a look at it on a net basis too. So a good set of earnings coming through, sustainability, and of course those labor negotiations will certainly be in focus from here on in. From the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, it's goodbye from me. That's where the buck stops. It's back to my colleague Nompumelelo Siziba.